Hey folks, it's a long time since yesterday for me at least. There have been a number of different media hits that I had to do today, but I want to talk about one case in particular that I think would be of interest in a public service announcement. It's a case in another state outside of New Jersey where a man who used to pride himself on being a good drinker got into a car with his wife and child, and he had a blood alcohol level. Eventually, we found out past 0.08, which is the legal limit. Rather, it was 0.13, and decided that he was going to drive on a frozen lake. And when he did so, the car actually fell into a hole, killing his child. He and his wife have survived. The debate on the case was whether or not the sentence given by the court and offered by the prosecutor in the case was fair, which was probation. And the judge gave a very interesting sentence in the case, no jail time, but he had to give 100 lectures about his remorse and the evils of drinking and driving to various groups as part of his punishment. So I love this case for a reason, because we rarely get to talk about it on TV, and it's called prosecutorial discretion. Now, as the guy who was the head prosecutor that handled multiple fatalities as a result of DUI cases, I can tell you with a certainty, at least for me, they were the hardest cases that I dealt with. Lots of people think prosecutors have no compassion or mercy. That's actually not true. Hopefully, that's a significant quality of a prosecutor in order to extend mercy when you can. But when you have DUI cases, when I first was a homicide prosecutor as a young lawyer, those cases were always treated, DUI fatalities, with a probationary sentence with no jail time. But over the years, those plea offers have escalated tremendously, as have the penalties, which can include manslaughter, ag manslaughter. You could face up to 20 years in prison. I'll tell you about a case my office handled when I was the county prosecutor. An individual who professed to be a great drinker got into a car and ran over two beautiful 8-year-old girls and killed them. That was one of those cases where I ultimately made the decision, we need to go the full boat with this guy. He had previous DUIs. He was significantly drinking. He knew the danger of DUIs. He had gone to the classes, and he killed two innocent children that weren't his own. And I felt that going to trial in that case and not offering an anemic plea was the best thing to do. And in fact, he got decades in prison. But what about this case? In this case, he killed his own child. And I like to say many times that that's a life sentence in and of itself. He didn't have that significant kind of record. And interestingly, excuse me, the wife, the family, as well as many in the community, supported a lenient sentence in this case. So let's go back to prosecutorial discretion. When I used to sit in the room with my assistant prosecutors, we would ask, what's the right thing to do? What's the measured punishment? What's justice? It's not as always easy as people think, but each case has to be taken on a case-by-case basis. I think this was an appropriate sentence. The judge and the prosecutor both agreed that this was an anomaly in the man's history. His remorse was extraordinary. He's living with that life sentence, as we discussed. He had no previous DUIs or things of that nature, and that the judge felt, as did the prosecutor, that the community's interests were not served by putting him in prison and just further traumatizing the family. But I'll tell you, prosecutors differ on this. In New Jersey, we practice criminal defense now, and I can tell you to a certainty, the same kind of case could be treated by another prosecutor with a different point of view and a different temperament, looking for that 20-year sentence for something like this, especially because he was under the influence and drove onto a frozen lake. That's a highly, obviously reckless thing to do with a child in the car. So this, what people ask a lot of times of me is like, how could you be a defense attorney and you were a prosecutor most of your career and a head prosecutor at that? Well, I'll tell you, this is what most defense attorneys do in cases. In truth, what we try to do with prosecutors, and having been one, knowing how to push those heartstrings and those heart buttons to say, listen, the family doesn't want it. The community doesn't want it. The guy learned his lesson. He'll never reoffend again. And that's a defense attorney's job to show that. And that in this particular case, we believe that justice would include mercy and compassion in a non-jail sentence. So in truth, with defense lawyering, what most people don't get, it's not what you see on TV where he didn't do it or he's claiming he didn't do it. That happens sometimes for sure. But most of the time, we know the evidence against the client is significant. And it's really more at that point about what you can do to position your client for the lesser punishment, what we call the mitigating factors. So be prepared. If you're out there with your friends, A good defense lawyer is preparing right from the beginning, not at the end of a case, to convince prosecutors that you should be given that break. And that's where the skill comes in. Hey, listen, love doing the videos. I hope it gives you some insight to the case. We were on HLN with Erica Hill when we discussed this case today. We'll be posting that video live. So please go to my YouTube channel, and that's at Bianchi Law Group. And my playlist is right in there. Excuse me for the cough. And also at Twitter and Instagram at rbianchiesq. So if you're out there and any of your friends are facing this, the first situation is the best way to avoid punishment is don't drink and drive. At least for me as a prosecutor, I hated those cases and hated in the times that I had to put otherwise decent people in jail. So if you do get in trouble, hey, check out the Bianchi Law Group. Certified criminal trial attorneys by the Supreme Court of New Jersey, myself and my partner, Dave Bruno, former prosecutors. And we hit it hard, and we're aggressive with our clients in order to position them to get the best result possible, even in difficult circumstances like this. I could say for this defense attorney in this case, did a very, very good job. Okay, thanks very much, and God bless you and your families.